Well, listen, our story today has got a little bit of everything in it. It's really convoluted. It's got mystery. It's got intrigue. It's got myth. It's, you name it, it's got it. And it starts in 1899 with a man, a medical doctor by the name of Robert Aiton. May not be pronouncing it right, but that's what I'm going to call it. He was a pioneer doctor in the valley at that stage, but he had some run-ins with the medical board. Nothing was ever stated as to reasons why, but just after the World War I in 1819, he moved to Superior. He has a wife and 8 kids, 4 boys and 4 girls. And this is where he met George Draculovich Miller. And the good doctor had a penchant for mining, and Miller filled him in on the Lost Dutchman legend and told him a bunch of stuff, and was easy to convince Aiton to go along with him and one of his partners. Miller had 2 partners, a fellow named John Halper and Ernest Martin. And one of the partners went with Miller and Aiton about 60 miles east of Phoenix, up the Apache Trail quite a ways, and they parked alongside the road and had a good walk out into Dismal Valley, where there was some claims that Miller had there. Well, it didn't take much to convince Aiton that this was a real deal. So he sets up an office in the 3rd Street in Phoenix and incorporates this business as the Lost Dutchman Gold Mine Incorporated. He names Miller as the president, Halper as the vice president, and himself as treasurer. And he also had a man working for him by the name of Simpson, who was in charge of publication. Well, by August of, they had a tremendous operation going on. They had a head frame there and a gasoline engine, an 8 horsepower engine, which they were down a 150-foot shaft, and that was bringing the ore bucket up and stuff like that. And there was a stone house there that George Miller was absolutely convinced that the Lost Dutchman lived in that stone house. And when things got tough and the Indians or Mexicans were around, he had a special hiding place in a hole in the opening of a shaft that he took refuge in until things calmed down. Well, that's the beginning of our story. And I don't know if there's ever going to be an end to it, but I'm sitting here with Dave Jones, and it was decided that we're going to go out there and look this place over. So our wilderness guide knew exactly where this was, and he took the film crew out there. And Dave, what'd you find?
Well, I thought this was going to be a good story, and I've always said that the Superstition Mountains to me is so rich in great stories that's why it's so. I think it's so. As a storyteller, as a filmmaker, I love great stories. But this one started out to be a good story, and then it turned out to be an amazing story. To me, it's the ultimate Lost Dutchman Mine story because it simply is so extravagant. I mean, in the brochure put together to get investors by Dr. Aiton, he tells the story how George Miller found the mine. And, folks, you're not going to believe this, but I'm going to tell it the way it's said in that brochure as best I can. But basically, he tells it that he met an old Apache Indian, and his name was Jack, and he really wanted George Miller's horse, wanted it really bad, and he knew that Miller was looking for gold. And he basically kind of, conned him, basically, I think, in my opinion. He says, well, you know what, up there in the mountains, there's a gold mine that the Indians have hidden for years. I mean, when the Spanish was there, they killed them off. and and then they took all the tailings and they packed them away, so they hid the mine completely, so nobody knows where it's at. And he started to tell them about, there's a spring there. That's why the Native Americans found it, because there was water there. And they also, there was an Indian head rock that overlooked the mine and guarded it. And then there was all these things, they were part of it, where the Mexicans died, and there's a shaft there hidden, and all these things. And so George Miller obviously presses him. He has the fantasy of gold, so he says, so tell me where it's at. He goes, well, I can't tell it. My people will not be happy about it. We've all been sworn to secrecy. It's all those things. Just like the normal, any con, this is Crazy Jake would have been proud of this story. So he basically says, okay, meet me at the stone house. And this is the stone house where Jacob Waltz used to live when he was mining his claim. And he's going, what? He goes, I'll meet you there and I'll tell you where it's at. So he gets to the cabin and he goes, I'm not going any further. My people might see me. It would be a death sentence for me. I don't want you to go. But if you go a quarter mile up this hill, there is the hiding place that Jacob Waltz had in the little hole that he dug, another mine where the Mexicans were massacred. There's the Indian head, and there's a spring. And so, George Miller thinks he's being conned because he knows that Indian wants his horse. So he says, okay, before I here's my horse, you guard it. And he went up the hill and he found the Indian head, which was on the brochure, the Indian rock, which was on their brochure, the Lost Dutchman Mine. He found the hole where supposedly Jacob Waltz would hide. He also found the spring. He found some places where it could have been where the massacre happened. He also found what could have been some diggings that were hidden really quite well. So he made the trail, the trade. I don't know if he made it doesn't say in the brochure that he made the trade, came back and agreed to it, or the Indian just disappeared when he came back. But that was their story of how he found it. So basically, this Indian revealed the secret location to the Jacob Waltz's mine and where he was mining, for a horse against his people.
So all of a sudden, the massacre that supposedly happened on the west face of the Superstitions over by Goldfield is now over in Dismal Valley, and a 2-room stone house in a cave is now a 1-room rock house on a mining dump.
Yep.
Is what you're telling me.
Yep, right there on the river. You got to give him credit.
Oh, man.
But see, the bottom line is, that is not even the biggest story and tale of this whole thing. It's it's the mine itself. Did they ever get any gold out of there?
Oh, well, I got to tell you, I've read several stories about this, and one of them was by Tom Collenborn. And when Tom Collenborn was a junior or a senior in the mid-50s, he knew the assayer, Mr. Deal. And he learned about assaying and some geology from Mr. Deal. And Mr. Deal just flat out told him that the mine was salted. He never said who did it. He didn't know exactly who did it. He did defend George though, because he said Miller was an honest man. And that's as far as it went. But whatever they found, well, history has pretty well proven they didn't find much of anything.
Well, the bottom line is, I went up there with our wilderness guide, and it's an amazing location. I mean, there's not much to be seen anymore because of the Forest Service and time has closed up most of what was there. But it's an interesting location to go to. But the thing I think is the funniest part of it is the brochure that Dr. Aiton put together is they found a giant vein of gold at 100 feet. But they need more. Obviously they need money. They need to sell stock. That's where the money comes in, is selling the stock to dig the hole deeper. But they found they just grabbed some loose stone right next to the vein and had it assayed, and it was 5 ounces per ton.
But that was evidently salted. So.
But I have to go with your theory that George Miller was an honest man, because nobody digs that much
Oh,
unless they really thought there was gold there somehow, some way.
yeah,
Believe the tale that the Indian told him for his horse.
well, he was so intrigued with his mining operation there that George, George died in 1936, 2 years before I was born, and he was. Well, there's some of the convolution that is involved with the story, but all three of these guys, his two partners, not Aiton, but his two partners, Halper and Martin and himself, were supposedly all buried there at the site. And George himself was put in the mine, and they dynamited it closed. Now, others have said that one of the partners is actually buried in Mesa Cemetery. So who knows? But you had to believe in what you were doing to dig all those holes and then actually want to be buried there. I believe George is still there.
Well, the wilderness guide showed me a little piece of metal sticking out of the ground, and I'll put a picture up of that. It's supposedly the marker where the number one was that they stuck, George in and dynamited him in there because he loved it so much. And I've heard a bunch of different ways. There's a big marker out there out on a bluff that supposedly is a grave marker or a claim marker. I'm not sure. And also behind the old stone cabin, there's a metal cross in the ground, and that's supposedly where one of the guys was buried as well. But we don't know. You know? It's convoluted. There's no marking on it. They're just like a little stone cross and a little stick coming out of the ground. But the rumor is they were so enthralled with it, when they died, they wanted to be part of it.
Yeah, they had a tremendous looking head frame there. I think we have a picture of it.
Yes, we do.
And they had 5 guys working there full time. Well, absolutely they believed in it. Most Dutch hunters do believe in it. Look at all the people that have spent years and years, thousands of them out there looking for this thing. You don't do that unless you have some belief in what you're talking about.
That is one thing about Aiton, is that in that brochure that he wrote up, he goes, even if you cannot afford to buy stock yourself, this is so important that this be done, that we advise you to tell all of your friends, and hopefully some of them can buy stock in this too. This is groundbreaking. This is to save the community. It will affect so many different people's lives.
Well, yeah, and the newspapers all picked it up. There were 4 newspapers, the Forest Blade, the Prescott Miner, the Republican, the Gazette, all published fantastic stories about this great strike in the Superstition Mountains. And when you get investors to invest in things like this, that money goes to pay for labor. They had 5 guys working full time, and they were getting paid themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know how high off the hog they were living, but they were making money off the sale of all this stock and stuff, And if you took all the money that was raised by Aiton for this project, and the millions of dollars that Crazy Jake bilked out of people, and others that's gone on in the history of this legend, it truly would be part of the clue that all that money would make millionaires out of 20 men. Easy.
Now, I also have some photos that are old, that was given by a researcher who went out there, and they explored some of the tunnels, and they go back, way back in there, and there's all kinds of infrastructure back, 20, 30 years ago. Supposedly there may be something open to this day. I didn't find it, I didn't see it. There are little indentations in areas where it looked like they went back in caves all over that area. They honeycombed that place, but the deep 100-foot mine and all that stuff has all been dynamited and closed up.
Okay.
But also we saw an ode to Tom Collenborn out there. We found an old rusty horseshoe on the ground.
Oh, okay.
We figured that was him giving us approval to be there.
The closest I was ever to it was, Tom and I have traversed the mountain from east to west and north to south, and that one time I've already told the story of how we took a string of horses from Quarter Circle U Ranch to JF Ranch and then came out out in Dismal Valley, and we were just a few hundred yards from those mining operations, and he mentioned it but didn't really say much about it. And it's one of the places I haven't been to, but I know there's some Indian ruins out there in Dismal Valley.
Yes, I did not personally see them, but I was told that they're up there.
Yeah, the military named it Dismal Valley because there were several battles out there, and it was absolutely dismal for the Indians. And this is where Tom Collenborn's famous Fort Hill is located and all that kind of thing. There's just a lot of stories about this area that we'll probably get into a little later on.
Well, I'll tell you, the road into there is extremely rough, and it's full of cattail and nasty stuff. You can tell that at times there is lots of water there. When we were there was not much.
Well, that's probably why they walked in from Apache Trail. There wasn't any road at that time.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Well, what do you think?
I think this is one of the greatest stories in the Superstition Mountains, and it's worthy of the Lost Dutchman name that it claims to have.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
Holy moly, it's a great story. But again, the value in this one is the story, not the gold that was found.
Yeah.
Because I don't think, like you said, I don't think there was any gold taken out of there besides what was salted. But they never gave up.
No, never gave up.
They mined it to their death, and they wanted to be buried there. They loved the story and the mystery and the legends so
There
much.
you go. Just another mystery of the Superstition Mountain.
Thank you for watching this episode of Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.